Have you ever seen something like this in person, a landing such as this?
Yeah, I have.
What happens? I mean, I know each landing is different.
Yeah,
but what's happened?
There's a possibility, because it is a larger field, they got to clear out the airspace of Lambert Field, and there's a possibility also that if they do decide to come in, because you were asking about the front nose gear, and we're talking about the door, two separate problems.
Right.
But the front nose gear does have a door, so when the nose gear comes up, the doors close. It comes down, the door's open. So that could be one of the issues they're dealing with.
I see.
And one of the things they could also possibly do as a preventive measure on the firefighting side is to foam the runway, to have foam there just in case you do come in, there is a problem with the possibility of fire. That would be, it's a fire retardant, and that would help. I've seen that done a number of times in my fire. I used to be an assistant fire chief, volunteer chief in Fairfax County, Virginia, and have taken training in aircraft rescue firefighting.
Do we know, Miles O'Brien, you know planes, I know you seem to know aviation pretty intimately, Mike Brooks, but Miles, where within this particular kind of plane, this Learjet 45, is the gas tank?
Well, it's mostly in the wings. You know, they call them wet wings, and so that, you know, you want to make sure that it's an abundance of caution. The fact is that, you know, if this pilot performs a nice smooth landing, it's not going to breach the fuel tank and cause a fire.
That was my question. Yep.
Less weight is better for sure, and less fuel is always better than more. So, and in addition, it does provide the flight crew an opportunity while in the air to troubleshoot the problem and see if they can rectify it. So there's really no good reason to rush these things until the fuel light starts to go on and tells you you're short on fuel, in which case then you need to bring it down to the ground one way or another.
In which case, the fuel light going on in this situation may be a good thing, because that means, right, they don't have as much fuel. You say it's best to have a lighter plane, lessens the perhaps, I don't know, the likelihood of a fire in the wings. Mike, if you are EMS, if you are St. Louis firefighters, you are rushing to Lambert Field, perhaps you're already there.
Oh, they're already there.
They're there. They have ambulances ready to roll. What then is procedure for them? Well,
they have a basic procedure that they do all the time, whether it be here at Hartsfield Jackson with the Atlanta Fire Department. They do it on a daily basis. They'll get someone with a hydraulic problem. It could be like this, and they respond out with their vehicles and their EMS units. If they believe, in fact, that they cannot get that down and they are going to have to do an emergency landing, don't like to say crash landing, but emergency landing, then they'll take additional procedures, have additional apparatus, additional EMS resources that will respond, and they'll be right alongside the airport, the runway as the plane lands.
Tori, let me bring you back in here. I understand you have some new information. Go ahead.
Right. Sort of the question I had here was actually for Miles as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how landing at that airport at Lambert Field versus the other one, is it more difficult because there's more air traffic in the area, possibly more planes on the ground there? Tell us a little bit more about the decision to land there.
Well, yeah, when you're in a situation like this and you've got a landing gear problem, you declared an emergency, you can trump Air Force One. So you don't worry about traffic. You're going to go in whenever you say, I need to begin my approach, and air traffic control will make that happen for you. So, yeah, while in the end this might cause a little bit of delay for the air traffic that goes in and out of Lambert, in this case, I don't think it'll be too drastic because, as we say, it's not like he's circling directly above the airport right now. The airport would remain open until such time as he began his approach, and then they would clear off some space for him. Potentially, of course, if in fact the plane is disabled for whatever reason and does, in fact, not have good landing gear, it might close a runway for a little while. So it will cause a little ripple of delay, but again, this is an issue that when you're talking about the lives of 8 passengers and the 2 crew, that obviously trumps that.
Miles, it's Brooke. How often do you have emergency landings on any given day at an airport?
Oh, there are quite a few we don't hear about, you know, and there are a lot of situations where, you know, air traffic control expedites airplanes for various problems. You know, various sensors come on, lights indicating that an engine is running hot, and a crew might declare an emergency as a result of that. We just don't hear about a lot of them. This kind of situation, tends to draw a crowd because there's not only do we hear about them, but we have time to kind of witness it all happen.
Okay, stay with me. We are approaching the bottom of the hour, and I just want to reset what we're looking at. I know we're just looking at Sky right now. This is perhaps in between these two different airports. We are watching a possible emergency landing situation involving a Learjet 45. The issue, according to the FAA, there are issues with a landing gear door. We're also hearing specifically from this airport saying it's a nose gear problem. We don't know if those are two different issues. Perhaps it's a landing gear door within the nose of this plane that could be the issue. And so this pilot, and we know there are 8 people on board this particular plane. I was talking to the airport. Initially, it was trying to land at St. Louis Downtown Airport, and Diane Earhart jumped on the phone with me. She confirmed this was not a military plane. It is not a government plane. This is a private jet. And so now we learn from our affiliate, KTVI, that this plane has now decided to go from this smaller airport, St. Louis Downtown Airport, to the big major airport in St. Louis, that being Lambert Field. I've got Miles O'Brien with me, aviation expert. CNN's aviation expert, Tori Dunnan, Mike Brooks, talking law enforcement analyst with me here. And Tori, let's just begin with you as we are resetting and as we are awaiting the next steps for this plane. Tell me what you know.
So the next steps, of course, this according to the FAA, saying that of course, they might be troubleshooting this issue, and that's sort of something that Miles had touched on earlier, saying, you know, why it might be taking a while for us to actually see this plane. The fact that there are all these different elements here. There's a crew of 2, from what we know. This is a Learjet 45, so possibly the pilot's trying to work out the situation here, and the airport preparing as well. We know at the previous airport they had ambulances on the tarmac. They're getting ready. Obviously, it's going to be the same case at this St. Louis Lambert Field. So for right now, we're all sort of in a wait-and-see mode as the pilots are talking to air traffic controllers and trying to figure out the best course of action in dealing with the problem at hand, Brooke.
Thank you, Tori. We have Dan Gord on the phone now. Dan is a commercial airline pilot. And Dan, full transparency, you've never flown one of these Learjets, but you have been involved in emergency landings. So tell me, if you are the pilot on board this plane, what are you doing likely right at this moment?
Hi, Brooke. Well, you know, this has been going on for a short while right now, and really, when something goes wrong up there, the first thing that you do is you reference your emergency checklists, and you start trying to determine whether the problem is actual, whether it's an indication, whether it's something else. And obviously, the pilots have spent a good amount of time trying to do that, but at this point, it sounds like they've made the decision to go ahead and land at Lambert, St. Louis, which has a longer runway than Cahokia, St. Louis Downtown Airport that they were looking at. So I guess they've made their decision that they're going to go ahead and land at Lambert, which makes sense because if you have a landing gear issue or expecting possibly to have an issue on touchdown, it makes sense to use the longest available runway in the area. So right now they're probably either completing some checklists, making some final decisions, and kind of planning out in their mind what they're going to do on that final approach and landing.
So upon that final approach, Dan, at Lambert St. Louis International Airport, and we know that this pilot had circled a couple of times and ultimately made the call, as Miles O'Brien sort of put it, concrete is your friend, right? When you are landing this plane with longer space in front of you. How do you ultimately say, all right, let's go?
Well, you know, he's right. There's no such thing as too long a runway when you have a situation like this. But at some point, and it's usually governed by the amount of fuel and the amount of time that you can continue to fly, at some point you have to conclude the troubleshooting process and start focusing on actually landing the aircraft and making that decision that, you know, what's going to happen, you know, is sort of upon you. And the reality is that, you know, I don't know which of the landing gear it is, if it's the nose gear.
We're hearing, let me just stop you there. Let me stop you there. We're hearing that it's the nose gear, but then the FAA was also saying landing gear door. Maybe Miles was saying it could be the landing gear door on the nose, but that's what we have.
I mean, the landing gear door doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me because there wouldn't be an indication more than likely that would have to do with the door. I mean, all of the indications in the cockpit, generally speaking, relate to the landing gear being down and locked. In other words, being in the proper position for landing. And so my guess is that this all originated because when they put the landing gear down, one of the indications didn't appear correctly, which led them to doubt whether that nose gear was actually down and locked.
I see.
It's entirely possible.
So is it possible, Dan, that the light could be wrong and that the landing gear on the nose is down?
Absolutely. It could be anything from the light bulb in the actual light is burnt out. It could be that the micro switch that triggers that light to come on in the cockpit is broken. It could be, in a worst case scenario, unlikely, but it could be that the actual, nose gear isn't down locked. So there's probably 4 or 5 things that it really could be, but more than likely, the simplest answer is the right one.
Okay, and then I can't help but think of these people on board this plane, right? And we don't even know, I don't know who these people are. We just know from the airport it was a private jet. But if you're the pilot on board this plane and you finally make that decision when you're heading into Lambert Field, to Lambert St. Louis International Airport, what are you telling the people on board other than buckle up?
Well, one of the things that I found in aviation that works is the truth. And the reality is that, at the point where you're going to make that approach and landing, you're secure in that decision. You're aware of where you are. You're confident in your course of action. So communicating that to the passengers and explaining to them what you expect the outcome to be is the best course of action. I mean, you want to tell them what's going to happen. You want to be honest with them. You don't want to sensationalize it. You don't want to, make it overly complicated. But at the end of the day, give them the real true story about what's happening and what you envision the outcome is going to be based on your experience.
Okay, forgive me, Dan. I was getting some information in my ear. We have now confirmed that this plane has landed. Eric, jump back in my... Do we have anything more than the fact that it's landed? Okay. Okay, now... Maybe my eyes aren't as great. Dan, I don't know if you're in front of a television. I have Mike Brooks squinting along with me. Apparently we are looking at the plane that is somewhere inside that spotlight. So we can't really deduce much. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say I don't see flames, therefore it's okay. We don't know. Clearly, there is a presence of emergency personnel on the tarmac. Mike Brooks, jump in.
Yeah, no, it looks like it's surrounded by emergency vehicles, the aircraft rescue firefighting vehicles from the Lambert St. Louis International Airport Fire Department. They have their own fire department there, and that's what we're seeing around there. And that's normal procedure. Go ahead and make sure everyone's safe. Make sure there is no fire, no smoke visible, and they'll go ahead and try to get those passengers off as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we just can't tell from here. Eric, do we have anything more from the airport beyond? That's it. That's all we have. Okay, so we now have, Dan, we know that this plane has landed. This is according to the spokesperson at the airport. It's tough to tell what exactly we're looking at beyond some yellow fire trucks here. Dan, are you in front of a TV?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's customary in a situation like this to stop the aircraft on the runway and let the airport fire rescue team evaluate the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, the picture's a little bit, well, now it's moving, but it looks like the aircraft is sitting fairly normally. It's tough to see. I mean, you can't really see the nose of the aircraft right now, but it's very common for aircraft that have this sort of situation to stop on the runway and get evaluated rather than try to taxi clear to the runway.
Okay. I would like to breathe a sigh of relief and tell everyone that everyone is A-OK. We cannot do that yet, but Dan makes the great point that, of course, they need to assess this plane, get everyone off, check them out. Mike Brooks is staring a little closer to a monitor here in studio, full transparency. We're just trying to see if we can tell. Can you see anything more, Mike?
It looks like they've got fire and rescue vehicles around it. It looks like it is sitting fairly normally. It looked like it's sitting down off their nose gear, just from the shaky picture we can see. But it looks like it's a normal. Looks like a normal landing from what I can see from here, Brooke.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to sit here and say it's normal. Looking at my email, I have one line. Per Lambert Airport, the plane has landed. They do not have specifics on the conditions of the jet or its passengers. Dan, if you could talk to the pilot right now, what would you want to ask?
I mean, just as a pilot, I would be curious as to, what the situation was and how it, what their first indication was. And it would be just sort of more of a shop talk thing. But, I mean, obviously the situation ended well. I mean, the landing looks like it was fairly normal. And I would imagine that, from what I can see, there's the situation is over at this point. But that's just my assessment from.
Yes, we hope everyone is A-OK now, as we've been on this for 40 minutes or so. Dan Gord, we appreciate you so much calling in and walking us through as a commercial airline pilot who has been through this before. Dan, thank you. I want to thank Tori Dunnan, our CNN aviation analyst. Miles O'Brien, thank you. And Mike Brooks, hopefully we'll be able to report in a matter of minutes as soon as we hear from the airport that truly everyone is A-OK. And now, other news today. Watch this.